To anyone that's watching, actually.
Hello, everyone who's watching. And I'm on time.
You are on time. So what's that badge on your sweatshirt?
Oh, that's Ferry Flatliners. That's the club. It's this side. That's the club.
What's the club?
It's called the Ferry Flatliners. So that's the local club that I've been running and cycling with. So there we are. Big shout out to the Flatliners.
So what you've been doing this week activity-wise? Have you been running 3 times a week or?
No, it's my training is absolutely awful at the moment. Unfortunately, work is taking over big time. I'm working stupid amounts of hours every day. So I'm literally running and riding once a week, and that's not enough. But yeah. So this weekend, what I've done today, I was working shop yesterday on Saturday, but today I've jumped on Zwift to do a little blast on there, but I've had nothing but issues on there, which is really frustrating. It kept losing signal. So I ended up doing like 4 different sessions to make up one session. But yeah, the joys of self-employment.
Yes. But the thing is, you are your own boss, so you can sack yourself.
Yeah.
But then you can employ yourself again. Just a few people saying hello. So this, I always say this one wrong. How would you say that name? Primal. How would you say that?
Primal Mike, maybe.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like it.
So I like it. Yeah. It's it's good.
I'll have to keep practicing. Yeah. So just Art Master Studio TV. Hi.
Hello.
I paint in watercolors and oils occasionally, and I might show you a bit of my work. If there really is an arty person there, and good old Matthew coming in from Norwich.
Are we going, Matthew? Okay.
Yeah.
Good support.
The home of Alan Partridge, that is, isn't it, Norwich? Anyway, and Delia Smith's football team, Norwich. Do you know that?
No.
You're not a football fan, are you?
No. Yeah, I've my father left when I was 3, so I was brought up in a house full of 3 women, basically. So sport wasn't a thing at all. No football, no rugby, nothing. Yeah, I was absolutely useless and super unfit growing up. I left school at 7 stone. The opposite to being sporty and athletic, which shocks a lot of people, I think, because of what I do now. But yeah, that's where I came from. So,
and without being too philosophical, then, do you feel that you suffered because you didn't have a dad around? Do you think that in Wales, fathers are the biggest sort of influence?
When it comes to sports, for sure. So, yeah, I don't know if I should say it's just in case. I don't think she's listening, but let's hope she isn't. My mother isn't the most maternal. It was, kick you out and go and play early in the morning and come back for tea.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never had that motherly figure really either. Yeah.
Oh no, we're going to start on a really sad note here. But yeah, I mean, I've got 2 degrees. I've got an honours degree in English literature and an honours degree in physiology and health sciences. My dad died when I was 10, and there was nobody in our family ever went to university. And my mum was so not academic, you would not believe it, which is not being disrespectful. But I lost her in my 20s. So they never got to see me be educated. But there you go. I left school. I was a bit of a tearaway, actually. I left school with no qualifications, did all my qualifications after school. Right, let's go through these messages very quickly. Sorry for the nickname. TF Celox. Tom. That's Tom. All right, let's see if we can remember that. Good evening, Tom. And we've got Jenna from Germany, which is good. What's the weather like in Germany? I wonder. Let's be Avenue. Isn't that the avenue where police officers live? Let's be Avenue. Right. Anyway, forget that.
And there's Jonathan.
Good old Jonathan. have to get him on as a guest some point, won't we?
Definitely. Definitely.
Southern California. Oh, hello. Yes, that's Emma, or just M. That's very good. And you've got Copper's Kitchen saying they'll adopt you.
Anytime.
Right. Look at this. Yes. Competition consultant. Nice to see you. So, yeah, it's good that people know each other in this community. And Sunny is from the US. But I wonder what part. Please don't say all of her. But I wonder what part of the States Sunny is from. And last one. Last hello, I think. How would you say that? Vitalitis? Dad died at 15 and my mum's the same as yours. Yeah, but yeah, my mum was just basically, she was just happy. You know, she liked looking at a blue sky and flowers and stuff like that. Hello from Memphis. We're not really talking very carnivore at the moment, are we? But that's good. It's good to do this.
Background stories, isn't it?
Yeah. Mississippi. Look at that.
Like life before carnivore.
Yeah. All right, here we go. So we got Mike. On the topic of education, I'm an electrical engineer. I want to learn about human physiology and metabolism. Is there any courses, websites you can recommend to obtain correct education? Right. I'm going to be really frank here. When I did my honours degree, which was very recent, you have to take the nutrition side with a pinch of salt. You really do. And same with my advanced personal training. And when I did my obesity and diabetes training, low carbs not in there. Not really. I mean, it's in a book. It's there. It's mentioned. But it's, you know, I'm not really being very positive here. And I do apologize for that because I'm not very positive about the answer. I think the best education you can get is hearing as many different sources as you can, reading as many different things as you can, hearing firsthand from people, and then basically trying to sort out the wheat from the chaff, which is what you do anyway. When, say, for instance, if you're looking at a study and you look at the conclusion and then you look at the data, I would literally say 95% of the time in nutrition science, and that's being generous, 95% of the time, it is a waste of time reading the conclusion because it doesn't relate to the data at all. So saying this probably 5% is good is actually optimistic. All right, so it could be worse than that. But I think, you know, the basis of physiology is pretty solid. You know, if you can understand neurotransmitters in the skeleton and muscles and ATP production, once you get into it, you'll realize that it's very frustrating. And I'm being quite polite here because I would say that when I did my degree, there were some very helpful things, but I only really was able to read between the lines because I'd lived the experience of doing rehab and you know, being around people and seeing the difference. So I was able to say, yeah, actually, when they start talking about descending pathways, which modulates pain, for instance, I know that's true. I know that works. So it's quite nice to know the chemistry and what happens when someone is in pain and how you can relieve that pain to actually be able to describe it to someone. So, yeah, the answer is I would get something like Guyton's medical physiology textbook and I would read it. I would simply read the textbook because that's not going to have an opinion, really. I mean, it does sort of postulate some sort of opinions, but in the main, it just tells you the facts. So that's Guyton's medical physiology textbook. Now, that might cost you 100 quid, all right, because it's difficult to get. But it would be cheaper than all the courses put together, and you'd learn more, definitely. So, right, let's have a look. I mean, you could listen to Rich. I mean, to be honest, right, if you listen to, say, Rich and Chafee for 3 hours and took some notes, someone like Michael Eads, who else would I recommend is very good? Amber O'Hearn. You know, if you really want to get into the weeds, they're very good. They're very, very good with that sort of stuff. Hello, Massachusetts, which always makes me think of the Bee Gees song. or a very bad joke about a big pile of dentures, a mass of chew sets. Right, here we go. Oh, here we go. Some Ayana, look at that. Keto Pro just did an 8.5 mile run.
Fantastic.
That's
yeah,
great.
she's working towards a half marathon coming up shortly. So yeah, be interesting to see how that pans out. Hope the training's going well. Maybe you can check an update in the comments. I know that we've been exchanging a few messages back and forth, but it'd be nice for everyone to hear about the progress with your running. Coming from a weightlifting background similar to myself.
Is Ayana worried about the time? I mean, you obviously knew she was doing this. Is she worried about the pace or just finishing?
It'd be interesting to find out. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, when I came into the running, people thought that I was going to be fit because of what I did. I couldn't run 1.5K, and I regarded myself as being a fit person. It's just completely different training. So I quite literally had to start from scratch. I was never one of these people that did the weightlifting and cardio. They both counterintuitive to each other. If you want to build muscle, still lifting, brilliant. If you want to build muscle, then the cardio is. I can hear you grinning in the background there. Cardio is counterintuitive. You've given the body two different signals. You see people in the gym who will hit the weights for an hour, which is plenty, because you don't increase cortisol to the level that you become catabolic. And then they'll go run in, which is undoing a lot of the hard work, the mTOR activation that you've just done in the gym. So if you are going to mix the weight training and the cardio, you need to either do it on separate days or at opposite ends of the day, i.e. one in the morning and one later in the day. You shouldn't do both together. But I didn't do any cardio for my cut-in. It was all done through diet and lifestyle, macro manipulation. I just manipulated my macros in order to cut down to single figure 2% body fat at the peak. But so running was new to me. So this is why it's a bit quite a big thing coming from a weightlifting background, going into running. People, I think, just have this conceived conception of just because you train in the gym that you're going to be instantly good at running, and that's not the case. At least it wasn't for me. So,
no, I think I can back that up, actually. So I always say about cross-cancelling, which is, if you're building muscle and then you're doing endurance running, you're building a muscle, then you're tearing it down, cross-cancelling. So anyway, but the thing you just said really hit a nerve, because when I was doing my running and I was preparing for a half marathon and then later for a marathon, you would think I was really fit. And one of the guys there said, "Oh, you're quite handy at soccer. Do you want to come along to some five-a-side?" Yep, fine. I haven't played five-a-side for 15 years. I will do that. And within 5 minutes, I was absolutely out. Absolutely. Completely different fitness. And I can remember him saying, I thought you were super fit, because I was one of the fastest people in the running group. It was a big group. Not the fastest, but, I was all there or thereabouts and always the one with the most stamina. And he actually was much younger. So I was in my 40s, I guess. Early 40s, maybe late 30s, and he was in his 20s, and he used me to pace himself in his first race, but he didn't tell me this. He just said, I use you as my pacer because you're about the pace I want to be, which was a compliment. Anyway, 5 minutes into this football, or soccer, I should say, for the people in the States, I just was flat on my back saying, I really need to train for soccer, which is something I know as a personal trainer. Quite a weird thing, Rich, is Beth is from Ilkeston, which is where I am. So that's interesting. I did not know that. Right, here we go. Mike, I'm actually listening to podcasts from people like you. Good, thank you. Or it could mean Rich, by the way. Chafee and Kilts, and reading books from people like them. Yeah, I mean, that's the best thing, just to expose yourself to. I think sometimes it's really good to see the other side, the other point of view, because you can then think to yourself, well, why are they saying that? I mean, Sean Baker's very good at being sent videos and then commenting and saying, did you see what that guy just said about acid reflux? Was his one today? And he's categorically said that eating meat will not help you with acid reflux. And of course, I've probably got at least 100 people that reversed acid reflux, and Sean being a much bigger fish has probably got thousands. So firstly, that's patently not true then. So this person is saying calling themselves the acid reflux guy, didn't know that actually he was talking rubbish. And then he said, there's no argument about fiber. You have to have fiber, period. That's it. There's nothing to even talk about. You have to have fiber. Then gave a couple of reasons why you had to have fiber, and Sean just ripped it apart. Now that's how you learn as well, because let's say that person said something you'd not heard and it sounded, well, that makes a bit of sense. Then you dive into that and dig into it and say, well, where's your evidence for that? And then that gives you more knowledge, really, because it would just open your eyes to different theories.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, the few points there, coming onto the acid reflux, most acid reflux is caused by lectins, and a lot of foods that you eat with fiber in contain lectins. The lectins will bind to mast cells and cause a release of histamine, which leads to acid reflux. So saying that you need fiber is probably absolutely counterintuitive, as most foods that contain fiber contain lectins. I used to suffer with severe acid reflux. A lot of mine was probably alcohol induced when I used to drink a lot. But when I did, which contains grains, when I did cut that out, I noticed that the food that I was eating, the muesli, and when I was trying to be healthy, the muesli that I was eating every day was also giving me acid reflux. And it was not until years and years later that I discovered that it was actually the lectins within that muesli that was giving me that acid reflux. And just to circle back to a point you made there in regards to looking at conflicting evidence, I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to that podcast yet, Steve, the one that Dr. Chafee and I released with Georgie Dinkoff and McCullough. I took that seriously because he had a counter opinion to everything that I thought that I knew. So a client of mine sent it to me and asked me if there was any value in it or any truth. So I went through it with a fine tooth comb eventually. The first time that I looked at it, I spent about 10 minutes and felt like I'd ripped it apart, but went through it with a fine tooth comb. And then I asked Dr. Chafee if he wanted to do a co-podcast and go through those points one by one. And I think for anybody that's watched, I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but I think we comfortably ripped apart any of those concerns about long-term ketosis and low carb being detrimental to your health. But it was very good, because sometimes you need those things to keep you in check, because same with you, Steve. The last thing you want to be doing is giving out bad advice. We've lived a lifestyle. It's allowed us to improve health and well-being beyond all comprehension. Everybody we work with, but still, you always feel, am I giving the correct advice? Should I be saying these things? Does meat cause cancer? All of these sorts of things keep rearing the heads. So we keep looking at that information, and that's the difference, I think, between our group. And I say our group as in the carnivore community, because we do look at other evidence, whereas the impression that I get is outside of that community, a lot of others have their opinion, as in fiber is required. For one, I can't remember the last time I had fiber, by the way, not from a plant at least. I find that they are stuck in their ways, and they're not willing to look at both sides of the evidence. But I pride myself on that. If anybody has counter evidence, I will gladly go through any research papers and to the nth degree to get to the truth, because I'm in this for optimal health. I'm in this for optimal health and well-being. I want to be the fittest and healthiest that I can be, and everybody that I give that advice to, I want to reap the benefits of. So if there's anything counter to that, then I want to know about it. If something came out tomorrow and said that introducing carbohydrate was beneficial for any reason, I would take that study seriously and I would look into it. But everyone that I've seen, as in regards to the influencers that have popped up saying that, honey is good for you and all these other things that you need, carb refeeds, I can't find any truth in that at all. One of them we referenced in this talk, but still, we're still open to that suggestion, we're still open to looking into that research. And I love getting into the weeds and looking into that research. And to date, I can honestly say that living this lifestyle, I genuinely believe to be the healthiest way to live. And as far as fiber goes, we get fiber from animals. Plants contain fiber, and it breaks down into something called butyrate, which is a short-chain fatty acid, which feeds the colonocytes in the gut. And that's true. But animal proteins also contain fiber. They contain animal fiber in the form of isobutyrate, isovalerate, and propionate, which break down to short-chain fatty acid, which feeds the gut microbes, the colonocytes in the gut, at a higher rate than the fiber from plants. So we don't need plant fiber. Animal fiber is all we need.
Yeah, and you get the isobutyrate from the blood side, which actually cuts out about 3 steps. So going back to that person wanting to learn, you see, Rich has got all the knowledge there. I literally have a playlist on my YouTube, which is all about the science, bite-sized, easy bits. So, and there's plenty of influencers you could look at. Yeah, and Ayana, who we were talking about there doing the run, I mean, she one of the reasons I absolutely love her coming on the channel, and we did do an interview, but also she likes to pick my brains apart, or not so much now. Possibly found somebody else a bit more interesting, maybe you, Rich. I don't know, but if you can't be questioned, and this is a bit of advice. If you've got someone online and they have blocked out comments, or only will allow comments from people they've approved, then I would actually not entertain their opinion. Because, you know, what's it? One of the quotes is, I would rather have questions that can't be answered rather than answers that can't be questioned, which I think is a really good phrase for the last 3-4 years. If you can't question someone's science, if you're not allowed to question it, then they're not on solid ground.
Question,
if Rich and I came on and said, right, well, if behind the scenes we said, well, there's going to be a question. If we don't really like it or can't answer it, we'll just pretend we've not seen it. That's ridiculous, which is why I'd like to go for every single comment, because we should. I think,
but we've done it previously. Even we've been asked questions that we didn't know the answer to.
Yeah.
And we've openly said, we've maybe got an opinion or an idea, but to be honest, it's not something that we've looked into or either looked into and can't remember. But I think we're always open in regards to answers to questions and whether we have an opinion or an answer for it, isn't it?
Yeah, nice segue to this quick question from Kyle. It says, Richard, you made a post about calcium in electrolytes isn't good. I use Redmond's Relight. It has 60 milligrams of calcium carbonate per serving. Should I be concerned about that?
No, I wouldn't be overly concerned. It depends how much you take in, obviously, but one of the studies that I referenced in that video, and maybe I should do another one and go into a lot more depth. That's an entire different subject by itself, but I tried to cram that into a short 5-minute video. But excess calcium consumption increases cardiovascular disease, or reportedly by up to 15%, which is a massive increase. Calcium is essential, but being carnivore, everything we consume contains lots and lots of calcium. It doesn't take an awful lot to get to the optimal level of calcium. So this is why I don't add it to my electrolytes, because I feel that we consume enough. And what I want to be careful is that we don't overconsume in regards to calcium supplementation. But 60 milligrams, I mean, it depends how much you take in. I wouldn't be overly concerned, with 60. Some of these supplements you see in the market have got a couple of hundred. Anything over 1,000 milligrams per day, either through dietary calcium or supplementation of calcium, has been shown to increase that risk of cardiovascular disease. But that's
calcium. What about the fact it's calcium carbonate? I mean, I was led to believe calcium carbonate is not really that bioavailable anyway.
Yeah, it isn't. But again, it's how much calcium are we consuming through diet, through natural source? It's an awful lot, and calcium. We don't want calcium circulating the body. It's got to be sent to where it needs to go. And then that's where we look into the K vitamins, isn't it? People supplement with vitamin K2 and D3, which are fat-soluble vitamins, by the way, which when a segue off this really, really quickly, but people will take these supplements while on a low-fat diet, but these are fat-soluble vitamins. We need the fat to be able to assimilate those You know, those
There's a
nutrients.
clue there, isn't there? There's a clue there in the name.
Yeah, exactly. So it, you know, I own a supplement store. I make supplements. But I class the supplements I make as foods because there's nothing artificial in there. It's all clean. They're 0 VAT rated, so they come under that umbrella. But I'm all for supplementation if it's going to give you an improvement or an advantage. But in regards to multivitamins and other supplementations, you know, I don't think that we need them. The argument for electrolytes on a carnivore diet is that a question that I had. Basically, I'll answer this and I'll go into what I was going to say. I wouldn't be concerned with 60 milligrams in your Redmond. I think that'll be okay. Moving on from that really quickly, and I've forgotten where I was going. So I knew
It makes you forgetful if you.
I knew I shouldn't have stopped with that one.
Don't worry.
It'll come back.
It'll come back. By the way, I was showing that if people want to go to your website and they haven't ordered before, you get 10% off with the code KETONEW10. You get 10%.
And I just remembered. I told you it'd come back.
Good.
So that's the ketones working, the BHB. So a question that I was asked recently is that, you know, why do you need salt or electrolytes living a carnivore lifestyle if it's meant to be optimal? And the answer to that is, well, you know, are you eating organ meats? Are you eating fish that you've caught from the sea? Are you drinking puddle water? Are you storing your meats on you know, rocks, you know, before cooking it? Is it in the sand, you know, picking up all of these little bits? Are you boiling your bones and creating bone broth? Because these are the things that we would have done, you know, for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. We would have eaten everything within that animal. And typically these days, you know, what are we eating? Bacon and eggs. And sausages and all those things are fine, but you're not eating. A lot of us don't eat organ meats. A lot of us are not using bone broth. We're not boiling the bones down. We're not getting the electrolytes from the bones, and we're certainly not storing our meats, you know, in the dirt on the floor, which is, you know, in puddle water and all that sorts of stuff. So we need salt. Salt is super important. I find that supplementation is a fantastic way. But I also do all of the other things. I know I use bone broth. I use collagen. I don't boil my bones, but because I'm too lazy. I have done, but I'm just too short a time. And we are bringing in a brand, Broil and Broth, I think it's called. Is that the right? We had the owner Rachel on the 24-hour carnivorathon. Is it broil and broth?
Yeah, boil and broth. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're I've kind of had some samples. Fantastic product. I look forward to a cup of that every night as it happens. So I sit by my window with a cup of bone broth. Fantastic way to get electrolytes in, as well as you know, all the collagen fibers and everything else that we need. But yeah, a little segue there into regards to why electrolytes in our diet from some form or another are really important, and why, you know, typically live in a carnivore or ketogenic lifestyle, we don't get enough of them. We're not boiling our bones. We're not boiling our bones.
And I think this is, you know, the big issue that Paul Saladino didn't really address when he was carnivore, and then felt that he was having cramps and fatigue and heart palpitations, because it would possibly be alleviated by an increase in sodium, because once you get that water weight go, it takes out a lot of sodium as well. So you got the sodium loss from a ketogenic diet. And if you start to increase your salt intake, for many people, that does get rid of those fatigue, palpitations, cramps, and those sort of things. You know, anyway, I don't want to get into that. So let's get into the next question. I
liked where we were going there. We'll have to pick that up another time.
Well, we've got tons of questions, you see, so we need to get into that. So Artmaster Studio TV, keto carnivore for over a year now, with a bit of 18-6 fasting. My weight the same as when I started. Any thoughts, guys? I'll do a short answer, then we'll have Rich step up, give you the long version. Firstly, could be body composition. I've got some props. This is a representation of some fat and muscle, which would weigh the same. All right. So if you've got all this fat, let's say that's a pound, you lose that pound of fat and you gain a pound of muscle, you have no weight loss, but your body composition might change. So that's the first thing. I know we got told off for this last week. talking about this, but looking in the mirror, looking at your clothes, those sort of things are much better than the scale. And if you've got a lot of healing going on as well, your body will prioritize using the raw materials that are coming in to fix those things. And I always use this analogy of a broken house. Okay, so if I was doing up a house and for weeks on end there was not enough bricks and there was not enough mortar and there was not enough tiles, okay, so I'm saying that's analogous to somebody doing a calorie restricted diet or a low fat diet. I would be constantly in this house thinking, I can't repair it because I haven't got the raw materials. Now, if all of a sudden someone dumped a load of bricks in there and a load of tiles and a load of mortar, which could be your fat, protein, carbohydrates, and said, do you want even more? I'll be like, oh, yeah, because I never know when that famine's going to happen again. I never know when I'm going to be short of storage. So, yeah, drop in as much as you can, and I'm going to start fixing stuff up. I wouldn't be then looking at the stores going, actually, I want to get rid of some of these fat stores, or these mortar stores. Let's use mortar as saying that is the fat. I'm going to keep that because I've had 15 years of trying to do up houses, and I've never had this beautiful amount of raw material. And I think this is one thing that happens to a lot of people. They say, I haven't lost much weight, but my hair's slightly better. My mood's better. My skin looks better. I've got more energy, and then the scale becomes a little bit irrelevant because you have to say, well, your body's healing first. So anyway, go on, Rich, fire away.
No, I think that's fantastic. You've hit the nail on the head. It is, but body composition is a major factor, isn't it? My weight when I was in a bulking phase, in prep for competition, if you like, was almost the same as it was when I was clinically obese. Yet my body fat percentage went from 60 something, I think mid 60s, down to 2% when I competed. So big difference in body composition, but the weight was the same. So what I'd question there is, how are you feeling? Are your aches and pains gone away? Do you feel better for it? Is your mental clarity better? Are you feeling healthier and fitter? Because those are the things that are important. The weight loss is simply a side effect of being unhealthy. It's a side effect of inflammation and insulin resistance. And if you've healed those, it doesn't matter really what your weight is, unless you are severely overweight. And then there are levers that we can pull. I would, in that case, maybe look at what you are eating in regards to carnivore. If you're eating cheese and cream, for example, that could be possibly too much. Are you maybe overdoing the salt and retaining more water, which is incredibly difficult? And most of our body weight is water, so we're going to retain a lot of water, especially as we adopt a ketogenic and carnivore style lifestyle. But those are the things that I would address is, how are you feeling? Because those are the reasons that you begin the lifestyle. Those are the things that are important. The weight is just a side effect, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great answer. Yeah. So it's trial and error in the end. It's trial and error. This is when people say, can I have how much protein do I need? How much fat do I need? Well, we don't know your activity levels, how well you sleep, what the temperature is where you are, your previous history. So you can't tell somebody you need to eat X amount of stuff. The easiest thing to do is to eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full, drink when you're thirsty, and then take it from there. Take it very basically. And look at how a couple of weeks have gone. And yeah, there are some culprits that do spring up and cause problems. Definitely, you can eat too much fat. Definitely, you can have too much dairy. You have to see what your body copes with. Some people find they can't cope with the fat for 6 months, a year, or they have to take lipase or something. Well, you just got, it's all trial and error, really.
Something really interesting that I'll check in on that is that I've come from a bodybuilding background where I was incredibly lean, but didn't do very much cardio. I would train typically for 45 minutes to an hour, but I was always lean, always shredded. Now I've gravitated into more cardio-based stuff. Now, the last 2 or 3 weeks, I haven't been doing as much as I should. But over the course of this year, I've done way more cardio and way more hours in regards to cardio training comparative to weight training. As you know, last week I did something like 112-mile bike ride, and it was a 100-miler before that. And you're talking 7 hours in the saddle. I didn't train 7 hours in a day when I was weight training. So the hours, the time that I've spent training is considerably higher now relative to what I used to do. My fat has gone up. My fat has increased. And I put this down to a comment that somebody put in a few weeks ago when they said, isn't all of that training bad for you, counterintuitive? Do you remember that conversation we had? And it is,
yes,
because of the
it is, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with it. Yeah. You're training your body to slow your metabolism down.
Yeah. Plus, it's this elevation in cortisol, which occurs beyond an hour typically. This lead-in to weight gain. So I do these rides, 112 miles, sitting in the saddle for 6 or 7 hours, not eating anything because I don't need it. Coming off the ride and being heavier than when I started. Obviously, I'm drinking water, so there's a lot of water weight. But the next day, when my body, would catch up, I'd still be heavier from doing this and not eating an awful lot. So hormones I've got a lot to do with in regards. In fact, our weight gain is controlled by the endocrine system. It's our hormones that govern whether we gain or lose weight. So, if there are external factors going on in regards to stress, this can lead to weight gain. If you're overtraining, it can lead to weight gain. So there's lots of things there that you can look at in regards to why maybe you're not losing weight. But a few things there, I think there are food for thought, pun intended.
Yes. So, Mike saying hello to Jonathan, or Johnny, that's the composition consultant. Hope you're still watching. Lindsay's saying hello from South Africa. I'm going to zip through some comments, Rich, because we're way behind. Ayana's saying she runs for mental strength and it's fun and different from weightlifting, not losing muscle, but I'll check. Absolutely. I mean, that's always the kicker. When people talk to me about running, if running is your sort of place to download and de-stress and that's how you function, I absolutely 100% get that. So there you go. That's a great comment. So, Mike, you mentioned not to combine weightlifting and cardio, but what about weightlifting followed by high-intensity sprints? Is that also anti-anabolic? I mean, I would say no, because that's short, explosive movements. So what would you say, Rich?
Yeah, I agree, providing you're within that window. Because typically once we've gone beyond an hour, we are increasing cortisol, which could be counterintuitive. So, I mean, it's up to, we're all different. It's up to you to gauge, but I wouldn't class that. That's high intensity. So, I mean, that's the type of training that I'd want to be doing rather than running for 4 hours, for example.
I forget you've got a different audience to me, because all the people I think that follow me know I'm notoriously into very short workouts. So my strength training workouts will never exceed 15 minutes. And if I was to go out and do sprintervals, which is what I call them, sprinting for intervals, I might do 4 to 10 intervals. And that's it. And it's 100 meters. I'll just run and that's it. Actually, I've reintroduced that after 8 months of not doing it. And my first go was last week, going back to sprinting, which was all true. And I said you've inspired me to get back into doing a bit of that sort of work. And within a week, well, actually, let's put it the other way around. When I started, my performance was atrocious, absolutely atrocious. And within 1 week, I've got it to be twice as fast as I was. That's how bad I had got from not doing it. All right. So anyway, right. We've got another nice question here from Carl, or statement. My N equals 1 from being keto carnivore for 1 year. I find my performance isn't what it used to be when eating carbs. My muscles are burning out quick, and I find my runs a bit harder. Suggestions? That's a great comment and question.
Yeah, this, context is really important, because typically when you've been keto carnivore for 3 to 6 months, you'll adapt and your body will upregulate certain enzymes and pathways, particularly things like the monocarboxylate transporters, which will allow us to recycle lactate in the muscle and allow us to train harder and for longer. It's unusual after a year for your performance to be dipping. The only difference in regards to carbs don't build muscle and carbs don't make you strong. They don't build muscle at all. So if we consume adequate protein, we will build equal amounts of muscle as to when we are co-consuming carbohydrates. But what does build muscle, what does increase muscle protein synthesis, is the co-ingestion of protein with fat, as nature intended. That builds more muscle. But the only difference that you may be lacking with carbohydrate is for every 1 gram of carbs in the muscle, we're going to hold 3 to 4 grams of glyco. And that's leverage in the muscle. And this is, so going off piste a little bit, Dianabol, a popular steroid on the market, will increase size massively and make you absolutely huge and incredibly strong. But when athletes come off Dianabol, they lose all their size and all their strength back to being, where they were previously, with very little gain, if none at all. And the reason for this is that it's adding volume to the muscle. So it's adding volume, which is allowing you to give it's giving you leverage. So it's making you stronger in that respect. Creatine will make you stronger. So are you taking creatine? Creatine will hold water in the muscle. It'll supply energy to the PC system. So for these explosive movements, it's not carbohydrate that supplies energy to the PC system. It's creatine. It's the phosphocreatine energy system. So this is anywhere between 9 seconds up to like 30 odd, I think, by memory. But those are the 1 lifters or the 5 reps. All of your strength stuff, your sprinting, that comes from the PC system. It doesn't come from the glycolytic energy system. That comes later on. But the glycolytic energy system, or the lactate system, we, being ketone carnivore, have the ability to upregulate. As I say, once we upregulate the monocarboxyl transporters, we have the ability to send lactate from the muscle to the liver, and the liver will recycle it into glycogen. And you heard that correctly, glycogen, back to the muscle at a higher rate than a carb athlete. So even being ketogenic and carnivore, we still have the ability to create glycogen in the muscle. And this is where the confusion with carbs in athletic sports came into, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, was because scientists, I think it was the 70s, wasn't it, that scientists discovered that we needed glycogen in the muscle for energy. We needed glycogen. We knew carbohydrates broke down into glycogen, so we just assumed that we needed carbohydrates. But we never investigated to see if the body had another mechanism in order to upregulate the body's ability to create glycogen. And it does. Keto adaptation, being keto carnivore for 3 to 6 months, allows the body to upregulate those pathways and enzymes and recycle this lactate. Salt is also important. That's going to add that volume that I mentioned earlier. So what I'd suggest maybe experimenting with is, more water, more salt, sodium. That's going to give you a better pump, and creatine. So, maybe you could come back but there, Kyle, and see if you are taking any of those, but they'll make a massive difference if you're not, for sure. I'm maybe not now because I'm not lifting, but when I was training up until last year, I was the strongest that I'd ever been on 0 carbohydrate. To put it, I'm not strong compared to some of these guys who are lifting stupid weights, but I'm small. My weight at the time was like 75k, and I would bench press 165k. I would deadlift 230 and squat 190, which pound for pound put me in the top 10 in the UK in powerlifting, and I never competed. I think, in fact, in the natural competitions, it would have put me number 3, which is what I was going to go into. I was going to go into powerlifting in order to prove our lifestyle. But after tearing my pec, that's what pulled me into the running and cycling. It was only meant to be a little piece to keep me occupied for a few weeks while I healed. And then, I never went back.
And then you got addicted to the competitive nature. Which is great. Can I just add on the reason we talk about fat? Is many reasons Rich just talked about, but very often not mentioned is the reason we say protein and fat. Fat will make the release of bile happen, and the absorption of amino acids and muscle protein synthesis needs that step. Bile actually will help with amino acid absorption. So when you do low or lean cuts and you take the fat out, that can sometimes be problematic, unless we go to the next question, which is from Tom. Who says, would you say 310 grams of protein and 200 grams of fat is low enough in fat for a day when you focus on 2-3 days of lean meats for a cut, like we talked about from Tom? So I'm assuming.
Yeah, Tom and I had, we did a consultation, a fantastic guy. Tom is a big guy. But yeah, I think you were 6 foot something, incredibly tall from what I can remember. Chuck it into the comments. And incredibly heavy, wasn't it? I can't remember the exact weights. But from the conversation we had, Tom, base everything around protein, aim for at least 1 gram per pound of body weight. Fat, I mean, looking at that from what I can remember, seems okay. But eat fat from nature. 20 grams of protein.
Let's just qualify what you just said. It's one gram of protein for lean body mass, not your body weight.
Yeah, well, but that's the thing. Nobody knows their lean body mass. So what the true figure is 0.82. 0.82 grams per pound of lean mass. But we know that excess protein causes it doesn't cause much. We need protein. I don't think protein is something we can overconsume. So for easeability, I always, I recommend people do 1 gram per pound, and you're going to be in a surplus, and that's fine. But I
think, Rich, sorry, just to broaden it out, you're talking about the bodybuilding, but if we've got people listening or watching who are 300 pounds and they want to be 200.
Yeah. But again, look, protein is something that you can't overconsume on. So Phil Taylor, for example, as you guys know that I've been working with Phil a little bit, I trebled the food that he was eating a few weeks ago. And before I did that, he said, there's no way I can eat it. I'm only eating once a day now. I said, Phil, just try it. And he did. He trebled the food, and the next few days he was down a few pounds. The body is a strange machine. What happens when we eat protein? Protein carries a high thermic effect. And to a degree, the more protein we consume, the higher that thermic effect is. But protein heals and repairs the body. When we heal and repair the body, we reduce inflammation. Inflammation causes us to hold weight. So through lots of different mechanisms, eating protein is the key. We should never not eat enough protein. Don't avoid eating protein. The fat is the lever that's going to govern whether we can gain or lose weight. And I would drop fat a lot when I was cutting for competition. The amount we need to drop is different for everyone. You need to do it as a gauge. 200 grams of fat there. I mean, me looking at that now, not remembering, your body weight seems high. 200 grams of fat, is it low enough for the lean days? I think that's what you're going on, isn't it? That seems a little bit high to me, Tom. I'd have to go back and revisit the conversation that we had. But we're all different. We're all going to have different outcomes. It's easy to gauge when we are ketogenic and carnivore because I eat the same food. So what I would do is, if you're not cutting for a competition, we can do this sustainably, over time. So you need to reduce your fat for those days that we spoke about, and go back to the higher fats on the higher fat days. If after a week nothing has moved, then the week after we reduce fat a little bit further. And it is as simple as that. We can apply a formula, but the formulas are different for everybody, and we would need to be, working together for a few weeks before we could gauge where you are metabolically. We may need to test the metabolism in order to ramp it up, or not, but everybody is different and we all move differently. You can't say that X amount of, the conversation that we had with Bart K recently, calories, they don't really exist. I want to go into the science behind it now, but, Stephen and I don't track calories. If anything, I track macros, but I don't even track macros anymore. I eat intuitively, and I gauge things intuitively. But if, you were to look at two different people who did the exact same exercise on the same days, twins, let's look at a set of twins. They might have a different outcome on their energy output because one of them may tap their foot. They may play with their pen when they're talking. They may tap their foot while they're sitting in the chair. They may bounce back and forth while the other may sit. All of these things have a massive impact on the amount of energy that your body is using. So you can't apply a formula that's going to be 100% accurate to everyone. This is why it's got to be gauged over time. Everybody is an individual. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah, and the thing is, if people think I'm trying to trip Rich up, I'm just playing devil's advocate, because people will be watching, saying, "Well, is that if it is it the weight you want to be or the weight you are? How do you work it out?" And the thing is, I am also on the same page with Rich when it comes to protein. It's really difficult to overeat. It's really difficult to overeat fat and protein.
You try gaining weight eating nothing but protein.
Very much. So yeah, but when people need a guide, that's the rule of thumb. And I agree that you can be more nuanced. Thief Bear. Now, I'm going to say I'm not the world's greatest person at reading these names, and I hope I've said that right. But since December 2022, they've reduced their waist by 11.8%. So it's gone from 42 to 37. Weight from 245 pounds to 205.
Brilliant.
And using the US Navy algorithm, 6 feet tall, around 27% body fat is now 20. So there you go.
Eating steak.
That's
Perfect.
great. You see, but I would tell you that your diet, what your exercise is worked for you, but it might not work for someone else. And this is always saying for everybody, there's a trial and error period, I think. So there's some to and fro comments in the stream there, which I won't put on the screen because it's just people talking to each other now. So that's good. There is an interesting thing here. Vitalitis, vegans never provide any evidence. They're just making videos. And I've got to be honest, that is true in the main. Most people seem to not have references when they're talking about nutrition science. They don't have the science, and they quote or just spout the same nonsense that there is no proof for. So using that guy earlier that Sean was very upset about, he's not looked. He calls himself the acid reflux guy or reflux guy, and thinks carnivore doesn't resolve it, where it clearly does. So I've got 100 people and he's got 1,000 people, so it clearly does work on that. So that's not very factual. So Benny C, question: what is the effect of a carnivore it's been a long day. What is the effect of a keto diet on creatinine levels, and what would be considered a normal creatinine level on a keto diet?
You probably may have a better answer than this for me. Creatinine is something I haven't looked at since I was bodybuilding over a year ago. I used to track my bloods regularly. Mine was always elevated because I trained a lot, which will increase levels, and I supplemented with creatine, which will increase levels. So I always worked on, I can't even remember the ranges, Steve. I don't know if you can, but mine were constantly elevated because I was working out. So, I mean, the levels are going to depend on your activity and what you are doing as well. But where the
let me give you it. So 0.6 to 1.2 milligrams per deciliter would be the sort of range. But I'm telling you now, the normative ranges on bloods are not optimal. All right. So before we did bloods, nobody knew anything. And this is a little history lesson from when I did my phlebotomy. So what did they do? They just took loads of bloods and they took loads of readings. And eventually, when they had enough bloods, they came up with these ranges of, it seems like we've done 100 blood tests. Let's be really basic about this little story. And if you look at all the different things, this seems to be the average. All right. So that's probably all right. There was very little sort of nuance to it other than that. And there was no looking at what they were eating. So one of the things that comes up constantly for me, because I've got the phlebotomy, is people sending me bloods and saying my blood urea nitrogen's gone up and so has my creatinine. So a breakdown product of protein synthesis is creatinine. And if you go slightly higher in your protein, that level will go up and so will your blood urea nitrogen. Now, then they will say, my doctor is having a bit of a problem. Now, I have just literally done a video of someone that was stage 3 on their kidney disease and has reversed it categorically. I think their GFR, which is the glomerular filtration rate, which has a little e, by the way, which is estimated, and that's an important point, went from 48 to 84 on a carnivore diet, not even keto, on carnivore. So just basically pure protein, and actually went from being a potential dialysis candidate to healthy. all right, and now doing incredible training and everything. Now, so that, what is the effect on your levels? Well, they'll go up because you're probably going to eat more protein. Second thing is you're going to get people telling you, if you have any bloods, that things don't look right, because they will be comparing it to these normative ranges for people that don't eat much protein, but also eat a lot of carbohydrates. So if you're worried for any reason, which you've not mentioned here, for instance, if you do have bloods and it says your EGFR is a little low, I would actually say, well, I need a cystatin C test, which is more of a direct reading of your blood urea nitrogen and your kidney function than an estimated GFR, because the estimated GFR is based on calculations based on normal people, normal as in not eating high protein.
As in sick people.
Yeah, sick people. Basically, you've took the words right out of my mouth. So that's my answer there. Let's have a look. So there's a lot of to and fro, like I say, in the comments. Hopefully that's helped, Benny. Right. So the normative ranges I gave you, don't worry too much if you're out of those. Look at other things around it as well, your GFR and all that. Right. So Carla said, I used to be on Lansoprolis and drink bottles and bottles of Gaviscon because of acid reflux. All medication has stopped since keto carnivore, so that's good.
Shout out to Carl. Question. I know Carl.
Good.
Yeah.
Right. Let's have a look.
I think we're meeting up soon, actually, Carl, I think, aren't we?
Sorry?
I think Carl's popping over to see me soon. I can't remember when, but yeah.
I do love this name, Reality Chick. Hello, I've been carnivore since June 5th and reduced my thyroid meds this week because I'm healing. There you go.
Brilliant.
This is great. Matthews asked another question. Does taking antidepressant medications such as, oh, blimey, escitalopram deplete vitamins and minerals? Does it? I don't know that. Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I wouldn't know for sure, but most medications seem to have a negative impact on the body's ability to absorb. So, but we can't give specific advice, especially when it comes to medication, unfortunately. But yeah, in my experience, medications do have a negative impact. But
yes, well, I mean, the mechanism of action of most medications is to interact with an enzyme and either increase the action of the enzyme or decrease it. So it's going to have an effect, a knock-on effect all around your body. Alan has asked, if I take exogenous ketones, which, you know, like this sort of thing here, look, Keto Pro. I don't know if that's not in focus. Anyway, should I take them every day? I marathon train 5 days a week and I lift 3 days a week. Should you take exogenous ketones? You've got powder there, haven't you?
Yeah, so that oil is C8, is caprylic acid. So what happens to that is it's sent straight to the liver through the hepatic portal vein and it's instantly created into ketones, whether you are ketogenic or not. That's the power of C8. Now that will supply ketones to the brain, the body, and the heart. I use them every day. I use them for different purposes. I use it more for mental clarity because it floods my brain with ketones. I work stupid amounts of hours. Now, the argument would be that being ketogenic and carnivore, we're creating these ketones naturally, which we do, and that to use the ketones would be wasted. But it depends on how active, I guess, your brain and your body are. I mean, I work 18-hour days. I work 7 days a week. So I'm only human. I haven't had a day off since I can remember. On the days that I technically have off, I'm riding 112 miles on a bike. So if you can count that as a day off. So the ketones will do a number of things. They reduce inflammation, so they help my body heal and repair a lot quicker, which obviously living keto and carnivore will do naturally to a degree. But they flood my brain with these ketones. They breach the blood-brain barrier. They supply my body and my brain with this energy at a much heightened level. So typically what you see is if you are keto carnivore and your level of activity is there, your performance, and if you take ketones, the ketones will increase, say that much. However, what percentage that is, that could be different for everyone. If you were a carb athlete and you were to take ketones, but your baseline's a lot lower, so if you're ketogenic and you're naturally, you're adapted, you're going to be better than yourself on carbohydrate. If you were to take ketones, then this would elevate your ability almost to where you were on ketones. So the percentage improvement is going to be a lot higher if you were a carb athlete, but obviously we are much more efficient at producing energy. So we're higher anyway, but that percentage is smaller. So should you take them every day? I do. I take them for anti-inflammatory purposes. I take it. I only use 1 scoop per day from the tub. Which would be a third of the raspberry bomb, if that's what you're comparing it to. But the raspberry bomb does contain caffeine. The other ketones that I do in the form of the BHB in the tub do not. And I also take it after training, especially cardio workouts, because it increases. Oh my goodness, what was Lance Armstrong done for taking?
I don't know.
Ah, my goodness, yeah, it's gone. It'll come back.
How much should you take if it's the oil? Just
so the oil, look, you can take as much or as little as you want.
Capful?
Yeah, a tablespoon. But if you were beginning, I would advise to start with a teaspoon, because the oil can cause gastro distress. So I also do a powder. The powder version doesn't cause the gastro distress, and you can take a lot more. And then, you know, if you are a coffee drinker on carnivore, that acts as a creamer as well. But I know some people who take 1 serving per day, and some that take lots and lots. Now, the beauty with this is that the caloric value is almost negligible because of the way that it's processed. So you'll get all the benefit of the increased, benefits of the ketones. But that will increase ketone levels to say 0.5 millimolars, whereas taking exogenous ketones can increase it by 1.5 to maybe 2. So it depends on what you're looking to do. But the interesting thing is they work through different mechanisms. So the ketones work directly, whereas the C8 has got to be converted into ketones. Studies have shown that they work synergistically. So when I take the ketones, I add the MCT powder, because what ketones do initially is they shut off fat burning, because your body doesn't need to produce ketones because you're flooding your body with ketones. So, and this is why they get a lot of bad press. They shut off your body, creating ketones. C8 powder and oil does not do that. It increases ketones immediately, whether you're ketogenic or not. It'll have an impact on fat metabolism. It'll increase the body's ability to burn a little bit more fat. And I'm not talking losing stones. This isn't a fat, fat loss medication. This isn't a fat burning pill. Nothing like that. But it does help mobilize fat and increase lipolysis and the body's ability to utilize and create ketones. But the thing is that when you use them together, they work synergistically. So instead of the ketones shutting off the body's ability to create ketones, it actually ramps it up. They work synergistically. Now, that said, you don't want to use it as a weight loss pill, because, as I say, it doesn't work that way. And this is why you don't want to use it too much. So you could overconsume on the BHB. So, some clients of mine have used it all day, every day. Well, now your body isn't burning any fat at all, because it doesn't need to. Your body's flooded with these exogenous ketones. It no longer needs to produce endogenous ketones. So use sparingly for weight loss. Use after a workout to help with recovery, blocks inflammation. And, you can use before a workout. So I would use, for example, on a long bike ride, because it helps with inflammation in my legs. And if you were to take the ketones before a marathon, the ketones would last for the entire marathon. In fact, 1 serving of the C8 oil or powder would probably supply your body with ketones for an hour, which is 1/3 of your marathon, or a quarter of your marathon, depending on how fast you're running. So they're absolutely incredible. But there is no definitive answer. Again, context is important. If you want to reach out to me directly, and we can work out what you're trying to get out of the ketones, because what you're trying to do is incredibly important in regards to how and when you're going to take that product. But it's something I use every day. I created these products for me to use, and I use them every day because I see a benefit personally.
Brilliant. See, now, just for people, we've gone to the hour. And if you're interested, Rich and I have a Mighty Networks, which I've just put a link into the comments, where you could go on. It's free to just log on, have a look at that, and you can start to and fro in with people, because the idea is to bounce off each other. It was nice to see, for instance, Dr. Kiltz just pop in and say hello, which
Yeah, hey,
was
Dr. Kiltz. I was in mid-flow. Apologies, I didn't get a chance to say hello. But
and we're way behind on all the questions, but we try to give you thorough answers, you see. Now, if you are putting this question on the live and you think, oh, I'd like to ask more, and sadly, they only do this for an hour because we can't do a 24-hour one every week. And you could go onto that community, tell people what you're eating, give each other a little bit of sort of motivation, a little bit of accountability, just pictures of what you're eating, whatever, and then pop a question on there, and you can get these sort of answers from people in the carnivore community. I'll be on there, Rich will be on there. Sorry, Rich.
That's right. I've just seen the thing pop up there about from Benny C about last time. So it was EPO. EPO was the compound, or one of the compounds. He's also done for blood doping, all sorts of things. But EPO we create naturally, and taking the BHB after a workout will naturally increase EPO. Apologies.
So we're going to rattle through a few. What happens if you overconsume electrolytes? My understanding is you have this system of urination and detoxing that tends to work because that's what your body does. It does tend to regulate your electrolytes.
You'll be incredibly hard pushed to overconsume electrolytes, especially if they're quality electrolytes at the right ratio. One of the studies in the presentations I give shows sodium excretion, the amount of sodium that is excreted through the body. So we can only assume that what is excreted is at least what is consumed, because some of it is obviously utilized. We are told not to consume more than 1,500 milligrams per day. But this, on the study that I referenced, covers 17 countries, over 100,000 participants. And it shows that if we go below 2,000 milligrams per day, that we increase our risk of death massively. All-cause mortality goes through the roof, with the sweet spot being around 4,000 to 6,000 milligrams. And I consume closer to 10,000 milligrams of sodium per day. I have never gotten to the point where I've taken in too much salt. But the salt to water ratio is important. You can't just be eating salt. You need to be hydrating as well. They both work synergistically. So you need the water to be hydrated, but you need the salts in order to do that. Otherwise, you just, if you, for example, consuming too much water, you're doing nothing more than simply flushing out those electrolytes. So there is a balance. There is a synergy between the two. But I've never known anyone to overdose from consuming too much salts.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I want to say is, I've been trying to do my own animations, because the animations for things that happen in the body are still very much based on carbohydrates. And they always upset me because they always seem to miss a critical point, or it's the ratios are wrong or something. And I actually experimented with doing showing actually action potentials, which was showing, sodium and potassium outside and inside the cell. And I wanted to do it correctly. So I attached molecules of water to each one. And it made the illustration so difficult to look at. I ended up not doing it. But but I think that's part of the problem. People seem to think that the electrolytes float around, or glucose floats around as like a little ball with a G on, if it's glucose and it's going through your blood like that. And it just isn't what happens. They attach to water molecules, and what Rich is saying, and it goes on to the next question. What's your opinion on silk or Celtic salt? I mean, I love Celtic salt and I'm really switched on to it.
Yeah.
But in the dispenser, it's damp. It is damp. It's not like these salts that are dry and easy to grind out, because salt has an affinity with water, or vice versa. So I think when you're hydrating, it's very important to not quaff down a whole liter of water. You do need to have salt in there if you're looking to hydrate properly. Here we go. We have the best live, apparently, which is good. That's very nice of you to say. It's one of the best chats because we can communicate effectively with coaches and each other. See, so this is good. It's what we're trying to do. Right. Let's have a look. It's just it's a love fest at the moment. It's really nice. Thanks, guys. Much sense spoken. I lost 10 stone 6 years ago on keto. In 8 months, kept that weight off. Not the same this time. I'm 58 years old, 6 foot and 21 stone. Yeah, well, one of the things is it is a lifestyle change. That's the important thing. It isn't a diet as such. And you need to get to the food freedom point of view where you're not constantly thinking about food or restricting yourself or saying, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to eat cheesecake, I'm not, so I think one of the things I was trying to say about the Mighty Network, for instance, is we will be talking in that community about, overcoming cravings and addictions. And there will be some paid for content as well, where, you can get 30 days, a daily thing to follow if you're interested. That's the sort of thing we're doing. But first thing is to just log in and say hello and get to know everybody. Weight gain is heavily influenced by the hormone lipase. I think weight gain, yes, that's a good comment. I think it's very hormonal driven, but there are emotional elements to it as well, I'd say. I think my big thing, I say my story, sorry, Rich, I'm doing a long answer here, but I'm getting through these things here, is when I first went low carb, the biggest problem I had was going to the cinema, because the cinema, my head was totally geared to a big Coke and a hot dog. That was it. And even though I'd given up bread and felt better and lost a ton of weight, and that was a big surprise to me. There was nothing to do with hunger, nothing to do with hormones. That really was association of that situation. So that was how I was thinking about it as well. TLV has said, I've piled on a load of weight since going carnivore, and it's all muscle mass, and I'm loving it. Finally quit my chocolate addiction this week and looking forward to winter swell. I feel so strong, so that's good. Tom is, you wanted to know how tall Tom is. He's 6'8" and 107 kilograms.
Yeah, I'll work that out and drop Tom a message after. Yeah,
let's whistle through this. I love giving people the goal of eat 1 gram of protein per standard goal body weight. So at 5'5", that's 125 pounds. So I eat 125 grams at least, but often more. You see, this is the thing. Your body wants protein, especially if you're training. Right. And we've caught up to where Dr. Kiltz came in, which was, I think, 20 minutes ago. So,
I wonder if we should get Dr. Kiltz on, if he's up for maybe next week or something. If you're still listening, Dr. Kiltz, I don't know if what you think, Steve. Be good to get.
Well, he's always great. I mean, I love Rob. I think he's just. To be honest, it's very difficult to say this because it feels like favoritism, and actually, I think every carnivore influencer is brilliant. I really do. I genuinely do. When we did that 24, there wasn't one person I was thinking they didn't really show up. They didn't bring their A game. But yes, Rob is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Brilliant. And he's just.
I don't want people to think it's just flannel. It's genuine. These people are really great. Behind the scenes, are really great as well. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I just saying, Dr. Kiltz has just come back now and said he'd love to. So there we are. Tune in for next week.
Yeah, we'll have Dr. Kiltz.
Special guest. Yes. Brilliant.
Kiltz's cups, Kiltz's ice cream. We'll be talking about all of that. That's great. I think it's great that he's a fertility expert, but everyone wants to talk about everything. And this is the other thing. You get so interested in every other area. You can be a specialist in one area. I think, for me, when I started this, and especially because the personal training, I was training an Olympic athlete with diabetes. That's my qualification, really getting into the sort of diabetic side. I thought, yeah, this is going to be my niche, but you just get into absolutely everything. Another success story. Been carnivore since April 2023. Dropped from 14 stone 7 to 11 stone 13. In the UK, we use stone, which is each stone is 14 pounds. So so 14 stone 7 pounds to 11 stone 13. Waist drop from 38 to 34. 58 years old, 5'9", and doing 65 push-ups in one set. That is awesome. That's awesome.
That's incredible. I think Dr. Kiltz has said what time. We're live at 7 now. We were live at 5 UK time, but now it's 7 next week.
Let's give Dr. Kiltz some realistic, because in the UK now, I don't know what your time is, Rob, but now it's quarter past 8 in the evening, 8:15 p.m. So, and we started an hour and 15 ago. So whatever your time is now, just take an hour off, and that's when it will be. Right. Benny's talking about his creatinine levels. My doctor exam had a low range of 0.7 and a higher range of 1.3. Yeah, and that's the other thing. We talked about this last week. Some labs will have different ranges as well. But I would want you to look at the whole thing. So like your GFR and your blood urea nitrogen and everything. Right, let's have a look. Next one. My son came home from uni and couldn't handle the fact his dad is metabolically fitter than him.
I love it.
He's turned carnivore this week. And that's it. Be the example. That is it. Be the example, which is great. Ins is question. Hi, I'm 2 months carnivore. My priority is to lose weight. I'm over 300 pounds. First month, I lost 20 pounds, but now I'm gaining again. I eat OMAD and so confused. Should I add fat to meals? Afraid to do so.
Eat intuitively. Again, so initially the weight loss is going to come through a lot of fluid loss. Yes, there's fat loss involved as well, but you're coming from a state of high insulin resistance. So typically what happens is we're reversing that insulin resistance. Almost overnight, we begin to reverse it. We can quite literally see on the graph of insulin resistance that we can reverse and repair this incredibly quickly. But when insulin drops, it signals the kidneys to release sodium from the body, and along with it, lots of water. So a lot of the weight that we lose initially is water and glycogen, as our glycogen stores are released. So it's common for things to slow down. But coming back to a point we made earlier, it's incredibly difficult to gain weight when you're eating nothing but protein. Maybe a question we can answer maybe next week if you wanted to pop it in the comments below. But I'd like to know what you are eating. There are certain things that we can consume, or we consume being keto or carnivore, that can cause us to hold weight. And OMAD isn't always the best thing either, because we may increase cortisol through not consuming enough throughout the day. I typically eat maybe twice a day, sometimes once a day, sometimes I eat 3 times a day. So I eat intuitively. I eat when I'm hungry. Coffee can increase cortisol as well. And anytime we increase cortisol, this can lead to weight gain and other stresses. So there's lots of factors going on with this. But I would suggest, obviously, continuing along your journey, consuming the meats. Any extra fat you put in is going to slow the process down, because the body is either going to use dietary fat or body fat. And we can seamlessly flick that switch from dietary fat into body fat by reducing the amount of dietary fat we consume. But you're so early on in your journey. For now, I would continue as you are and see how you are over the next week or two, because one thing that we don't want to be doing is not consuming enough fat, because fat is essential for life. It's essential for the formation of every cell in the body. Protein and fat is essential for everything that the body makes. Every cell in the body is made from protein and fat. Cholesterol is essential for life. It's essential for cell formation, cell communication, nutrient absorption, nutrient transportation, the production of hormones, and it's essential for healing. So we need fat within our diet. So I would be cautious in regards to reducing the fat currently. And what I would suggest is eat as nature intended. So an egg, for example, contains protein and fat. A piece of steak contains protein and fat. Chicken breast with the skin on is protein and fat. What I would come away from potentially is adding fats to your food. So if you're cooking in butter, tallow, lard, or ghee, maybe just dry cook the meats for now. If you're adding cream to your coffee, maybe take out the cream and even the coffee for now. As I say, that may be having a negative impact on cortisol. Adding fats to foods, adding fats to cooking and everything else could have a negative impact. So take things back to basics and eat meat or food as nature intended. Eat it in complex without adding the fats, and see how you are within the next week or two, and then maybe pop on and give us an update and we can advise further from there.
That's brilliant. We're coming near the end. I've got a nice question. So thanks. I'm not going to flash up every comment. That's really nice, which is great for you to do that. Thank you. But I want to get to a question that I know Rich might enjoy. So Mike Rudd, your thoughts about Dr. Salad Dinner's use of fruit before or after exercise to temporarily boost glucose.
So he's talking about our friend Saladino. Yeah, look,
let's,
it was.
Let's just. I want to say this. I love Paul. I love his content, and I like his book very much. So I want to say that, but I'm not in agreement with what he does. So that's me.
Yeah. So look, I've experimented. As I said earlier, I'm in pursuit of optimal health and well-being and athletic performance. I want to be the healthiest and fittest I can be. I want to be the best athlete I can be. So I've experimented with carbohydrates, during exercise, pre-exercise, post-exercise. I've tried with carb loading, carb backloading. I've tried with everything you could think of that is being suggested ever, from every form of carbohydrate, fruit, honey, rice, which is lectin free, and probably one of the better ones, by the way. But that's a different story. But I found no benefit. In fact, when I took in carbohydrate, it worsened my performance. I found it negatively impacted my performance. Now, the reason that Dr. Saladino has put these things back in is because he noticed a drop in, at least this is what I believe to be, he noticed a drop in testosterone and decided that was normal, and decided to increase his testosterone by adding in foods that would potentially do that, i.e. carbohydrate. But what we need to remember is when we look at thyroid function, for example, in menopausal women, perimenopausal women, or at least perceived to be, we see a reduction in thyroid hormone when people begin a keto carnivore journey. But thyroid stimulating hormone also decreases. Now, thyroid stimulating hormone is what increases thyroid hormone. But typically what happens when thyroid hormone comes down, thyroid stimulating hormone would be increased in order to try to increase thyroid hormone. But we see the opposite in keto and carnivore. We see thyroid stimulating hormone coming down. And the reason for this is the body becomes more efficient. And that makes perfect sense, because when you think in the example of insulin, when we don't eat carbohydrate, the body becomes more insulin sensitive. It doesn't become insulin resistant. We become more insulin sensitive. We need less insulin within the body to perform the same amount of work. And this is why we improve insulin resistance. The same happens with thyroid hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone. Why wouldn't it happen with testosterone? We need less testosterone to give us the same amount of work. It becomes more efficient. And that's why testosterone drops or perceives to be dropped, because we're looking at parameters, like Steve said earlier, between your normal person. We're not normal people. Normal people are sick. And we are not sick. We are living our lives as nature intended. We are thriving as nature intended. This is how we have evolved our entire existence. Man is thriving through eating nothing but meat and being ketogenic and carnivore our entire existence. If our testosterone is lower, then it is meant to be lower. If for whatever reason our cortisol is slightly elevated, then that's where it is meant to be. This is our natural metabolic state. I've built packs, tons and tons of muscle through being ketogenic and carnivore, quicker arguably than anybody else I was competing against. And any impact that I had on testosterone definitely did not inhibit my ability to build muscle. And this is why I believe Paul Saladino has put the fruit and honey back in. And alongside, I think, sugar addiction. I think he's addicted to sugar. But he also surfs for like 3-4 hours a day. If you're not training for 3 or 4 hours a day, then that's an awful lot of carbohydrate to burn off. But again, we're all individual. If you think it's going to work for you, fantastic experiment. But what I would suggest is we don't need an awful lot. I would suggest experiment somewhere around 0.5 grams per pound of body weight for an exercise, to see if that has any positive impact. But myself, I've noticed no performance enhancing boost from carbohydrate whatsoever. And the athletes that I work with work towards this metabolic flexibility, that they become strict keto carnivore in order to become metabolically flexible, dual fuel, so they can use this glucose in performance in competition. And when they put it back in, they come away because it has a negative impact. And this is my experience. So this is what I have found. Obviously, you may find a different outcome. You may experience a different output. But for me, carbohydrate is not required whatsoever. And I just think it's an excuse to put something that contains sugar back in personally.
Yeah, you see, now Mike has said, I'll just deal with this very quickly because we can't go on for too much longer. He's saying he had cramp. This is the sort of, and I'm not knocking you, Mike, by the way, because it's worked for you. I had cramps prior to using a small amount of fruit. So once you use a small amount of fruit and your cramps go, you just sort of say, well, that worked, so that's fine. But if you look at why is that working? The mechanism will be that you suddenly increased insulin and you've increased water retention and therefore you've increased sodium retention. So that's the thing. And many people say, a lot of my coach clients, I couldn't sleep until I had some carbs just before bed. Well, it isn't the carbs that's helping them. It's actually that little boost of insulin. So what they could do is look at what they're eating earlier on, just to have a little bit more insulin, because you need insulin. It's the inappropriate, elevated levels of insulin that you don't want. So that small amount of fruit, you could experiment, Mike. You could actually hydrate with some salty water, like a quarter teaspoon of salt in a small tumbler of water, and not use the fruit for a bit, come back next week and say, yeah, that actually works as well. Because what you're doing with the fruit is without a doubt, you're then getting that insulin and water retention and sodium, therefore sodium retention back up a bit. But I think just cut out the fruit, then you don't have the fructose, which is going to your liver. You just got this lovely water with a little bit of salt in, and you should see that your cramps go. And people fear salt. This is the problem. And you don't need to. As Rich said earlier, you can thrive with salt, and we're too scared of it. So anyway, right, that's a 90-minute live stream. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you for the people that have hooked up into the Mighty Networks, which is really good. Next week, we're going to have Dr. Robert Kiltz coming in. So I'm going to have to work out how to put 3 people on the screen. And,
Oops, my bad.
You can rifle questions at him. Do you want to wrap up, Rich?
Yeah, I just, again, like to thank everybody for listening. Every week we say we're going to do 45 minutes to an hour, and we're super strict, no longer. But then one of us gets carried away, and we end up doing an hour and a half. So apologies.
No, I think people are still here watching. I don't think that's such a big problem. And I didn't flash up, but just there's the yin and yang. Vitalitas. Every time I trained, I had aching muscles, including fruit. Stopped after a week. So there's different ways of talking about this. Anyway, right. And I'm going to finish with Ayana. Hasn't Paul finally come out saying he's not carnivore? He's called the Carnivore MD, and I think it just calls himself animal based, but it does make me laugh because apparently orange juice, freshly squeezed orange juice, is animal based. That's what he said the other day. A banana is animal based. He literally said these things, and it's like, well, actually, they're not. They're not animal based. I can't see how that's animal based. Anyway, right. Because you could pick anything up and go, right, I've got a big steak here, and I'm going to put it between 2 pieces of bread. So bread's animal based. I think it's strange how he's using terminology in such a way which is not really clear. But anyway, right. Sorry, Rich. You finish, and then I'll press end broadcast.
Brilliant. No, thank you all for listening again. Super excited for Dr. Kiltz next week. Any questions, pop them below, and we'll be sure to prioritize those. But thanks again. This is us signing out, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.